Alrighty. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's technical steering meeting. And this meeting we will discuss the ONOS Build event agenda. And afterwards, we will have a discussion about whether to how to improve the flow objective service with respect to adding PuntObjective as a variant of the filtering objective. So, did we have any shout outs or?
I'll do a quick one. I was just talking to William this morning. He just got back home, and so did Brian, about their community trip in Asia. So a shout out to the community in China and Korea and Taiwan for all the support and hosting us there, and it sounds like it was a great time.
Sounds good. And so I think I can pass you the.
Can I do just a quick shout out to everybody? Some of you know we've been working very hard on stability for ONOS and STC. I got 120 straight successful runs overnight.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Which is probably triple the best we've ever gotten. So that's pretty cool. And the one that failed was because the network failed.
That's pretty cool.
Nice.
Cool. So is it showing up there?
That's because I have not.
There we go. All right, cool. So I wanted to go into the detail of the ONOS Build schedule, but before we do that, I'll just step back a little bit and talk about what the goals are for this event. But you may have already seen this discussion on blogs or the mailing list, so I won't go too much into the why of it. I do want to get into the details, but just quickly on the why. We want to get everybody together because the community has grown quickly over the last, almost 2 years now. There are over, 70 different organizations in the community. That's great to see all that growth, but with a large community, there's no point in having that large community if they're not effectively, everybody working together towards a shared goal. So we want to get people together, align them on what the vision of ONOS is, so we're all heading in the same direction, and then as a community figure out how we want to work together to make that vision a reality. And so it's very hands-on, I think we could start with a little bit of a presentation to do that alignment part, but then have to be very open-ended. Let's get people together in the same place at the same time and say, okay, if that's the vision and we all believe it and we all want it to happen, let's get hands-on and figure out how we want to make it happen. So that's the why. And unless anybody has questions about that, I'll dive into the more of the what.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So the what is, again, this is the first time we're trying it. So, this is a stab, and if, this is a good format, we can evolve it in the future. But currently we're thinking 3 days. 1 day didn't seem nearly enough. Even 2 days didn't seem nearly enough. So we're talking about a 3-day event from November 2nd through November 4th. That's roughly divided into 3 types of activities. One, social activities, because it's very clear that in online communities where you don't see people face to face, that you're much more effective working remotely if you form some social bonds together. So even if a social activity is not directly related to hacking, so to speak, or anything directly related to ONOS, I think that social time is going to set us up to be effective after the event going forward. So roughly about 25% social activity, another 25% around presentations. I want to minimize the amount of presentations, but I think we need at least some of those to do that alignment and to share the vision. So 25 social, 25 presentations, and the other 50 would be what we're kind of a more general bucket, kind of considered to be interactive activities. And you can see on the agenda, I think that's fairly open right now, and that could be a number of different things. Is it a hackathon? Is it whatever? That's where I want to get into the details and get people's feedback. So let's just go through. So on Wednesday, you can see there's not much. Our thought was that we could start things off with some sort of a social activity, and this could be optional if people are traveling in. Maybe some people could make it, some people not, but some sort of social activity where we all get together and start forming those bonds. And I think doing it first, again, will also help just make the rest of the 2 days more effective as well, because you meet people you kind of have broken the ice. And this could be all sorts of things. People have ideas about social activities that work really well at other events they went to. I know Ali had said that there was a really great social activity he had done at an event. I welcome ideas or thoughts. So
1 second, Andrea, you were trying to speak. We can't seem to hear you.
It was at the beginning, Tom.
Okay, never mind. Late message delivery, I guess. Okay.
So again, if people have thoughts about what a fun social activity might be, feel free. Either share now or share it with me offline. But that would be that Wednesday. And there's been some other discussions. Murad had suggested maybe there's some sort of a plug fest or something else we could do. So I think that Wednesday could be flexible. We could do some sort of other optional activities on that Wednesday. William said he's gotten some. We can figure out some spacing. If somebody wants to lead some sort of another optional activity on that Wednesday, we could sort of make that happen. Which points to another topic we need to get to once we go through this, and if we agree on a schedule, the next task for William and me will find owners for some different sections of this. So just be thinking about that as you're going through the schedule. Is there something on here I might want to own and help drive? So do that social activity, most likely the second half of that first day. Let people arrive and then get them together. And then on Thursday, kind of the more official part of the kickoff of the event, start with, again, very light schedule of presentations. Have a welcoming and then dive straight into it. Have the vision and the roadmap of ONOS just like right off of the bat. Like, okay, here's where we want to go, and we're gonna get you excited about it and bring everybody along with us. And that could be, I think we can do a mix of both presenting that information and also maybe have a more interactive version of that. So you can see the color coding on here. Red is presentations and blue is more interactive. So if we have maybe a presentation about the vision, follow it up with a panel, and maybe get all the TST up there and then just throw it open to the community. Like, ask them anything for 45 minutes. Have it be. I think the more two-way we make this instead of broadcast, the better.
Yes. No, I
So-
completely agree.
Would something like that help shape the agenda for the afternoon and next day? Like
It
if there are
could.
topics or
So that gets to the kind of the rest of it. I'll scroll down here. Yeah. There could be. So our thought was basically we could have perhaps a few different tracks going on in parallel, and maybe there could be some sort of more unconferencey track where, based on what people get together and talk about, they can shape that. Is that what you're asking? Like, do they have an opportunity to shape what they?
Yeah. I guess the thing is, most of the people at the event are going to be familiar with ONOS, so you don't have to give them a lot of content before they can ask questions.
Yeah.
And so, for me, like putting the quick QA up front would sort of lead to potentially the shaping of a future agenda.
But by like what
based
people are
on,
asking about and
on
what.
topics that we can't necessarily predict.
Sure. And that brings up a good point, and I skipped over this, but in terms of the audience, you're absolutely right. We want this to be experienced, existing people in the community. So we're going to have the registration out there hopefully this week, and you'll see it's kind of got this 2 tiers. If you have already committed code to ONOS or have done some sort of development with ONOS, you get in for free. So we're really trying to incent people who have done something and already, like you said, Brian, already have kind of a base, and we aren't getting like newbies. And people who, there will be an option to pay to get in as a general session, and if you're just interested in ONOS, you can come. But we're really trying to incent existing experienced community members from being here. And then to your point about the tracks, I'll tell you what we were thinking about for the current version of the tracks in just 1 second. I don't want to skip over this part about the lunch and science fair. What we have heard in discussions we've had, this is not the only discussion we've had about this. We've blogged about this and talked about this on other calls. We've heard from people that they really want an opportunity to showcase what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, on a recent community steering team call, somebody from Telefonica had said, like, that's really going to be what we asked, like, what would be the most valuable thing for you? He's like, well, if I could really showcase what I'm doing. So there's going to be a couple different places to do that. One is this science fair idea. If we block out like a 2-hour chunk of time and give people an opportunity, sort of like a demo space, but just give people a chance to set up a little small section where they can show what they're doing, and then give everybody at the event 2 hours to kind of wander around and experience that. I think that will really facilitate the showcasing and sharing of that.
Like a P4 conference they do that.
Oh, nice. And where people
Yeah.
like that. Nice. We thought one of the tracks could also be explicitly set up for a partner and collaborator showcase. Like if people wanted to do more of a presentation type opportunity about telling people what they're doing, have one track that we just have a call for sessions, and if somebody wants to do more of a presentation type thing, just give them the space for that. So that was one of the tracks we were thinking of.
David.
Yeah.
David. Don't forget that we will issue a call for papers to our partners and collaborators for that.
Yes. One of the other tracks, and this goes back to, I think, Brian's point. I mean, yes, many people at the event will have some experience, but do we still, this was kind of based on some other discussions we've had, do we still want to help people level up? Like, do we want kind of an ONOS basics track is what we're calling it, where people here from ON.Lab share information about, you know, how, yes, maybe you know some things about ONOS, but if you want to go deeper, we'll give you some sessions that are more tutorial based or more how-to based. So that was another idea about a track that maybe we could run on our end if we want to communicate out some learnings to people. And then we did really, again, want to make sure that it wasn't all presentations. So you can see here we have this blue track right now that we've been calling the Hackathon track, which would be very much, you don't want to sit in presentations, you just want to get your hands dirty. So this is very kind of open-ended right now, like what exactly this means, you know, we need to sort it out, but just have a very, we wanted to reserve one track that was very much hands-on. I don't want to get presented at, I want to do something. And so again, if we, when we talk about owners, if somebody's very interested in the more like do something side of things, I would love the input and the leadership on that. So that was it for the tracks. And you can see here, we would just carry the tracks through the rest of this first initial day. And then the kickoff in the morning day, again, very light on presentations, maybe have some sort of a panel that people could join to have to start the day off, and then go right back into those 3 tracks for the bulk of the last day, and then end it with a showcase for the brigades. Because I think this is going to be a big piece of what we want to do, really give, if we're talking about this is the roadmap, how we make that roadmap a reality is, you know, the brigades is a big part of that. So we really want to do a few things. One, showcase that this is how we're accelerating it, but also give a recognition moment for the people who have stepped up to join the brigade. And then we would close. So, you know, I know there's been some discussion about some fine tuning. Luca had suggested maybe we move where the brigade showcase is, and I'm totally fine with that. But just as at a high level, does this seem like the right set of things to be doing there? I mean, do we want...
Do we have a track for people interested in deployment or people interested in testing?
We could.
How do we
I was
engage
thinking similar
that
lines
part of
for-
the community?
For research, I was thinking the same thing for research. We have a lot of, clearly, you can tell on the mailing list they're PhD candidates. There's something to do for them. Maybe they want to showcase their work. Give a little, you know, I don't know what, but
Is
give a
that
little
part of the
exposure.
science,
to
right? Would they be doing that?
It certainly could be, yeah. But if there is, I mean, I think it all depends on, you know, I think it goes back to ownership. If somebody really wants to step up and own a testing track, that's great. We'll make the space. But is there 2 days worth? Is that like, are we talking about 2 days worth of things, or just 2 hours worth of things? Or if it's just an hour or two, we could just schedule it.
So maybe what we ought to do is kind of figure out where we, at least in our view, where we think they would fit, and then maybe explicitly give those people kind of like a home. Because I don't want to. I think at least initially for the first event, fracturing it too much, segmenting it too much, might be to split. But I think if we explicitly find a bucket for one of those breakout sessions,
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like
and
we
then I
could.
think that would be that way. At least the people interested in the same idea, the same sort of aspect would funnel to the same event. Give them a forum.
For sure.
And then if
Maybe
they
it's more
become,
like a BOF,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
BOF session for testing.
Or we could easily reserve one of these chunks of time, an hour in the ONOS Basics track for testing. Yeah.
Yes, to your point, Tom, the idea was to put some of it, like performance, deployments, and all of it in the ONOS Basics. And to Brian's point, that ONOS Basics tracks can be shaped based on the question that were asked on the first day at the TST panel. and maybe we put down some talks. Let's say split it in half an hour per talk, and then we move these talks around based on the interest. But I think that the performance and deployments, at least this was the idea that was floating around between me, William, and David, that the performance deployments and everything that was mostly ON.Lab outwards will be put in the ONOS Basics tracks. Basic might be not the right name, we can change that, but that's the bucket where we should put things from us outwards, in my opinion.
Yeah, from the deployment perspective, I wouldn't honestly, I'm in favor of mixing developers and deployers together in the same track. At the end of the day, if you want to deploy today, you have to read also code and develop, right? So it's fine. Maybe for testing, there's a different focus, but I'm not sure. Because anyway, even people that test ONOS at some point need to understand what's going on. You know? So I wouldn't segment it too much.
Yeah, and if we have too many tracks going on, that's going to compete against each other. And so our thought was 3 was a happy medium, and if we could kind of fit everything in.
Yeah, but I think explicitly naming like the birds of the feather type session or a place where the people of that interest could gather and coalesce is a good idea, right?
And again, we still have that Wednesday. So, for example, if you're a brigade leader and you want to do an informal thing with your brigade, that Wednesday is pretty much unstructured and unscheduled. You know, we're encouraging people to get there and get together. And so perhaps you could do a testing birds of a feather that Wednesday evening or something. Like, we'll have some sort of reception, and then people can get together if they want to aggregate around whatever topics are of interest. So at a high level, nobody's really saying this looks
this is good.
wrong or
At least to
anything.
me, it's really nice.
All right. Any more specific feedback? Like, look, like I'd like to move this to another time, or
Yeah, my reason for moving the brigade, the brigade space to earlier, was just that usually when you're close to the end, many people they have to catch the plane, they start to go out. So my idea was to give the right space to the brigades for their work and maybe anticipate it a little bit. I saw, well, in the first agenda, we have 2 partners showcase, for example, and I was suggesting to keep one anyway in the morning and substitute the other one with the brigade stuff. So
I think it would make sense early on. I mean, as long as brigade leaders didn't need that time at the event to do whatever they need to do to get a demo and a showcase ready, like I think it would fit thematically right immediately after the vision roadmap. We could say, here's the vision, and here's how we're accelerating it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, putting this leaving early thing, I don't know. It only gets encouraged if you put crumbs at the end. Then people will always start leaving early. So put some. I think if you put something of significance at the end, then it will put a strut in there. And people just plan for the full event. Right?
yeah, that's good.
So we just need one more after that one's free beer.
I was gonna say,
Yeah,
free beer goes at the very end.
Only if you say
So one
What day is the last day? Sorry.
Friday.
Friday. Then we should have an event on Friday.
Well, we could. Yeah, maybe people leave Saturday morning. Yeah.
So one thing that a lot of one event that I have at a lot of conferences is they have like a cocktail hour, like with a big banquet dinner,
Mhm.
and then at that banquet dinner they have some form of like either awards or like wacky ideas kind of presentations,
Yeah, those
which can be a lot of fun. Where you give them like a 5-minute slot, they can talk about some crazy using ONOS to control lasers on the moon. Or something.
That's cool.
Just like something insane, right? And it's just the way that those things are delivered. Usually people have a couple of drinks.
Yeah, and then they
It
can
can be a lot
enjoy
of
it.
fun.
No, that's great too.
So I don't know if that's better on Thursday because we think people are leaving on Friday, or if you do that on Friday as kind of like a closing thing.
Yeah,
People may have flights out for the weekend, so
sure.
they may get less attendance on Friday than on Thursday.
Well, I like the idea of incenting people to stay through Friday. Putting something fun.
I mean, why would you rush out of Paris?
Sure.
On
Like, I gotta
Friday
get
night
out of here.
in November?
Yeah, exactly.
When there is Saturday and Sunday in Paris.
No, good point.
I mean,
Well, again, if you want to think through this, I mean, send specific suggestions. Like, it would be great if we did X on Friday. We don't have to dive into it all because you can think about it now. But I did want to ask one other question about this hackathon track. Like, what would people like to do for the very hands-on stuff? If there are people who don't want to sit and get presented at, like, what do we want to do with that group? Is a hackathon the right thing? If so, what does that look like? Or is there something else? Or like, if you had 30 developers who already knew about ONOS and they didn't want to sit in presentations, what would you want to do with that group?
David, can I share what Murat said yesterday?
Sure, please.
Okay, so basically, this guy Murat yesterday in the ambassador call suggested us to do a plug fest also, and because he was suggesting that he could bring some switches and do some integration between ONOS and those switches and all of that, and I do believe this could be the theme of the hackathon, because William thought of it as putting it on Wednesday, but I do believe that like 5 to 6 hours is not enough. But 2 days are. So if we put together the Plugfest and Hackathon, meaning that we maybe issue a call for a session even there, we could do something like this, like the Plugfest, or if it's not a Plugfest, you have an application, you want to work on it with like some other people, just like a get-together. I do have some of this experience in the ITF Hackathon, because there it was more or less not starts from scratch on a project, but bring your project in and work with people that usually work remotely, locally in the same place. And also having like me in that case there, helping with ONOS related questions, it was good. So having the TST and ON.Lab team there at the hackathon to help people is I think it's good. So I think this should be that.
I wonder if it would be useful to have at least some local infrastructure, like local test cells. Maybe like bring one bare metal box and maybe share, 3 cells that could be borrowed.
I mean, I think we
That could be good.
Right? Because we would just need basically one self-contained server with enough cores to run. That might not take too much. That might not take too much power, right?
Well, this is really where ownership matters, because I mean,
Tom, I think that we can also get it here in Europe, not even bring it from the US or.
That's fine. I didn't say. I mean, my first thought was sure. My first thought was to use Amazon, but the problem is generally there tends to be an issue with outbound connectivity at these places, and so that's why I was wondering if we could have it local, and just basically have a local computing resource that people could be for a hackathon purpose specifically, and we can ship it from wherever.
But yes, it's a suggestion to have a Plugfest.
That's what Murat was suggesting.
But I mean, I'll say one thing: setting up a Plugfest. It's not like you just tell people bring your favorite hardware and play.
The seating power or the location.
Well, no. It just takes them ages to set up. It takes at previous Plugfest that I've done, it's usually you show up a week before.
Oh, really?
And you set it up.
So even a day before is not enough.
No. The day before. I mean, like, depending on what you want to do. Right? If you just want to have instances of ONOS running and people show up with their switches and just point the switches at ONOS and say, oh, it works. Then yeah, fine.
Well, this is where ownership matters. I mean, I think neither William or I should own this hackathon track. So I guess if I have one ask beyond just give me feedback on the schedule, if somebody wants to own this hackathon track, I think a developer is in a much better position to make that a useful.
A hackathon should be a hackathon.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Ali in a sense that I've also been to Plugfest and they're much more of an overhead, and plus also there's logistical issues to be overcome, and I'm not sure about the facilities. I think it would increase the scope too much.
And that's fine.
I would start with just a hackathon for hackathon to encourage it and provide infrastructure. 1 or 2 bare metal servers would suffice to keep whatever groups of people or brigades that are working together on this track, to support them without succumbing to whatever connectivity limitations the facility may have. And it might be easy to set up in just a short time.
So for that a solution, but I'm not sure, I have to ask, we are in discussion with that. We can get the canonical box, the orange box. Sure. It's like a bag.
Yeah, we can discuss that. Let's discuss that off.
Yeah, and I need to drop in a minute.
Exactly, which is why I was trying to be sensitive on time.
But I was going to say, if somebody's interested in this, and it doesn't even have to be a hackathon, just the interactive track, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, let me know. Ali said he's interested. If other people are interested, I mean, I think Andrea is obviously interested. I mean, I think the more developers who actually help shape that, the better it's going to be.
Are we gonna have any people at the other tracks? Anyway, I don't think so. No, just joking. Yeah. No, I think so. We can discuss some of the details probably offline.
Okay, cool.
So,
And again, if you have other feedback or specifics about the schedule, just let me know.
yeah, this is
Great.
great.
Well, thanks.
Thanks, David. Cool. Then, so for the next item, we're going to talk about PuntObjective as an alternative to forwarding objectives. So, a moment.
Bill, I'll go grab.
Okay. Alrighty. Thanks, David. So I think, nobody took any notes. I should probably explicitly ask for people to take notes.
I'm also changing meeting. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. See you later. Thanks, Andrea. So I think you guys want to lead the discussion, Ali or Jono, lead the discussion on because I think there was an issue with. You want to set it up, Ali? Or?
I don't really remember what the issue was. Oh, the issue is that the packet service uses forwarding objectives to set up punting rules up to the controller, and the suggestion was to to use filtering objectives instead of forwarding objectives, which would make it more towards the objective model. That makes any sense. So the idea would be that use filtering objectives to punt packets up to ONOS rather than forwarding objectives, which are essentially supposed to be forwarding the packets through the pipeline rather than filtering what gets in and does not get into the pipeline.
Yeah, but I think the objection to me was that the punting seems more of a forwarding thing, right? Because you have a match and action. You imagine some traffic and your action is punt to the controller. So to me, that's a forwarding thing. And like a filtering should be like, this is the traffic I want in, or this is the traffic I don't want in, rather than sort of trying to also. I don't know. I think to me, if you do this with filtering, it blurs the line between what are you doing with filtering and what are you doing with forwarding. They seem to do the same thing, right, in different contexts. Imagine action.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that we leave things as is, basically.
I think punting seems to fit more with forwarding objective.
Okay. But so what you're saying is leave it.
Basically, yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with leaving it. I don't really mind. I just find it a little strange, right? Like it's a.
The other thing was, I think in your original proposal, it was you were using a filtering objective to specify what you wanted to punt, and you were saying that in the absence of any other handling in the pipeline, it gets punted, right? So like the default action is punt, but nobody actually says that explicitly.
Which I think is fine, right? Like I don't know what to do with this thing set to the controller.
By default, I think that should be something that the controller turns on, right?
We can add
For example, if you think about routing, you let traffic into your pipeline, and then you go to the routing table, and if you miss the routing table, usually you just drop it, right? You wouldn't want to be able to spam the controller by sending traffic that doesn't match the routing table.
No, but I mean,
Actually, in the fabric design, we need to do that. We need to tag into a controller if the packet gets the routing table.
In some cases, you may want to if you want the controller to handle the misses,
but you should ask for it explicitly.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
I mean, we can add a field. We can add a method to the filtering objective that's fine. That's not a big deal, right? Like how you indicate that is not really the problem. It's where should you do it? Should you do it in the filtering objective and the forwarding objective, or just add a new objective? I'm against adding a new objective because
I don't really want to add a new objective either. I think a punt objective sounds like a subset of forwarding to me and maybe filtering too.
How do we figure this out now?
And I think Charles also brought up something where a lot of the filtering, like
a lot of pipeline doesn't support you do all the match field at the very beginning of the pipeline. For example, like the OFDPA can only match something like VLAN, and destination MAC address. for something like, for example, destination IP address or like ARP, LDP, that need to go into ACL table, which is the last table of the pipeline.
Yeah.
So in this case, it doesn't make sense to. Well, actually, you cannot do the filtering because the first week table doesn't allow you to do so.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is that, for example, with VRADA, we have cases where you punt to the controller, but yeah, I guess I'm just trying to remember what the problem is, but we kind of you let traffic into the pipeline, and you want to in some way you have to say what happens to the traffic. Does it go out of port or does it come to the controller? Okay. This is the control traffic. So if you're proposing to use filtering objectives for punting, then
I think the idea is, do we agree? This is tough, right? Do we agree that like the only traffic that should ever get punted in like a reasonable case is control traffic, right? Like BGP traffic, like ARP traffic.
in the case
No,
of
but also table-based
reactive forwarding, right?
routing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, reactive forwarding is a kind of like.
But not even like the basic reactive forwarding we do here. Like in the case where like what they do in super routing, where the packet misses the routing table, and then you
Pack it into a controller, and that controller figure out where to forward that.
really. Yeah, the same thing. Yeah,
But that's
It's responsibility of the application to make sure it doesn't spam the controller, right?
I mean, it should be made more difficult by the API in a way, right? Because I mean, like, you're not only affecting you, you're affecting every other application on the system, right? So you're saying in segment routing, you hit the routing table. This is data plane traffic.
it's the same. And I had an option in VRADA as well because the problem.
That's
is,
only when the first time when the destination host starts to
Yeah.
discover or configure it.
Yeah, when you have a router and you want to forward traffic to a directly connected host, the controller needs to resolve that host.
And that only happened on the
routes,
last
the
hop.
routes tell you about all the other networks in the world, but they don't tell you about the host and you're directly connected.
Yeah, that's the last hop, right? The destination hop,
Yeah.
the destination switch.
So in that case, the controller has to do something.
For second routing, the controller would just do ARP and ask for MAC address of the destination host.
So where are we heading with this then?
That's a good question. I'm trying to figure out like what.
I mean, I can see use cases in both filtering and forwarding objective, right? So sometimes we want to pack it in at the very beginning. We don't even want to the packet enter. But sometimes we also need to pack it in during the pipe, between the tables.
I mean, maybe the answer is have that option in both.
Maybe, yeah.
Because I don't like the idea that when you're forwarding your packet through your pipeline, at some point that packet can be punted up. I don't like it. I agree that it might have to happen in segment routing because of OFTPA, but it seems to me wrong, right? Like you're in the middle of your pipeline, right? You're executing. It seems like the wrong place to all of a sudden interrupt execution and set it up.
No, it's totally necessary because it's not able to match any field in any tables, right?
In your case, yes, maybe
Not only segment routing case, but for all the pipeline, you can only match certain field in certain table, which the table can locate it in the middle of the pipeline.
I understand that, but I mean that doesn't make it. Just because you can't match every field in every table doesn't mean you have to pack it in a packet. They don't go hand in hand, right? Like those two notions don't go hand in hand. Just because I can't match on an IP field in table 25, doesn't mean I have to pack it in. I mean, otherwise it means I can't do anything correctly. I can't do anything at line rate. I can't do anything reliably at line rate. So that's not the right place to do. That's not there. That's a separable issue. But maybe the answer is, to some extent, the forwarding objective will always have the capability to punt.
Right.
Because it's just a selector and an actual extension.
Yeah.
So it will always have the capability no matter what we do to it.
Yeah.
Right? The filtering objective, on the other hand, doesn't have that explicit capability yet. And I guess the suggestion here is to add it to the filtering objective.
So you're saying when you build your filtering, you would say punt, right? To make this explicit. Yeah.
Make it explicit, just to make it clear that this is what's happening, and then and people want to use forwarding objectives to punt their packet or filtering objectives. That's fine. It raises an issue like that our objective API is becoming a little more.
So this is the larger issue, which is the API is very permissive, right? You can do a lot of different things. You can do the same thing in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
And the drivers, right now, usually we implement the application and the driver together because the same person is doing that. But we haven't got to a point yet where we can build a driver that works for a bunch of different applications, or have a driver implemented by a different person in the application.
I think we have to change the model in which we do objectives. Rather than doing objectives in this kind of prescribed way where we reuse open solutions, we express desired states of the packet once it upon exiting the pipeline.
Yeah.
Right. So we describe what the packet should look like.
Yeah.
And we say this is the packet you get in. This is the packet I want out. Now figure it out. Right. Like figure out what you need to do, what sequence of operations, what table operations you need to do, and do that. And it's more like a declarative way of saying, I want this packet in this state. So you do it. Great.
This might be a flow objectives 2.0 kind of.
Yeah.
It's not really an evolution of the current one.
No, it would be a divergence, complete divergence.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I guess that makes
You can-
sense. Yeah. It'd be nice to have a plan to.
It would be for ONOS
some-
2.0.
So one other thing to think about is you could think of the device as sort of being a cache of rules, a cache of objectives or whatever, and you may exhaust the table at some point. And at that point, you're basically having a fast path, which is line rate in hardware, and the slow path, which is punt to the controller.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like the OBS model for hardware, but you have like a slow path where you resolve these rules and then you compile them down for certain specific flows that are hot and put them on a data plane. And this isn't going to be a problem in like core probably, but it could be a problem where you have a lot of different hosts or edges or custom flows or custom policy. So in that case, it seems like being able to punt to the controller sort of anywhere in the pipeline makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's the routing case is exactly that, right? When you get a packet that's going to a directly connected host, you need to look up this host somehow. And the controller and catch that result in the switch, but usually the controller is going to have to do that in the first place.
So cool question. So let's say if we add it to both filtering and forwarding, is that going to what is that going to do to the complexity of drivers or ability for existing drivers to continue to operate? Because I mean, for forwarding objective, we already have that, right? Because there is basically just not the operation, right? We just are giving it an explicit name.
I think it will the status quo will stay the same, where a driver is generally written for a particular application, and so they kind of understand one another, which is not ideal, but yeah, I guess like we're saying, it's hard to think about how we can change that with the current API.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so open-ended.
Okay. So is it
You're also suggesting we change the packet service to use the filtering objective.
Well, I had a patch set for that. That's where this entire
That's where it started.
It started because I submitted a patch and
Yeah,
everybody
but
went,
if you do that, if you do that, we also need to make sure all the drivers are updated to, because right now all the drivers assume that the packet service use forwarding versatile, right? So we need to change the behavior of driver that says, okay, right now it is possible to get the filtering objective with punt, and the driver need to know how to deal with it. So there are things to do. I don't know how to like do it incrementally, or we need to do it at once to update all the driver. I don't think.
Yeah, I think this will would be a breaking change. But we could budget like early on in the next release. And
So,
then,
yeah,
So, is it
maybe
maybe, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Not that I want to say that we have to do more stuff that we already, than we already are, but maybe the idea is just leave it as is. Add filtering objective, add punt filtering objective, right? Just leave it, and new drivers can use the punt and filtering objective.
And O driver can move
All
forward.
driver can move backwards, or,
Lateral.
yeah, move backwards if need be, right? It shouldn't be a big change, frankly.
So basically,
have
the
a lot
idea
of
is to set
drivers.
up the API to move forward,
Mhm.
right? And ability to use the new mechanism, but preserve the old mechanism. Move all the drivers at sort of a pace. And once all of them have been moved, then we can deprecate the other.
Yeah.
That sounds
That's
reasonable to me.
Yeah.
And clearly, because we need some runway to be able to properly test it, and I agree that the Big Bang approach is not something that's gonna be tenable because
Yeah. And another issue is that, like, in the case where we do have device vendors building drivers, they're trying to build them to, you know, an API or their interpretation of the API. But it's very fluid and keeps changing, right? So these guys are not very happy with that.
that's another aspect of it. Yeah, what is this gonna do to the
But yeah, it sounds like the real solution is to kind of
Move
to
to
objectives 2.0. Yeah.
move towards
So do we want to set up something? Is it worthwhile then to move to do this incremental step to clean this up at all then, or is it? What I mean, worthwhile. Technically, it's worthwhile, but to me, it's more of a version thing. Is that gonna take off? Are we gonna be spending more API change credits with our partners?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe in some cases. So we can add the punt to the filtering objective, and when applications themselves are trying to punt, they can use that. The big question is, when does the packet service move to that, right?
Yes.
Because
Well, so that would be
kind
that's
of
probably the last
kind
step.
of a breaking change. Right?
That's probably the last step when everything's ready then.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult change. It's one of the difficult changes.
But it's difficult because we can't necessarily test any of these drivers because we don't really have the devices, right? So even if we change the API, we can't really.
I mean, this could be done as part of if we change this API like this, part of a release where we rev to 2.0, right? So we can make a ticket for it in Jira, tag it for 2.0, and make that change then. And then we're fine, right? If we want to break APIs, go ahead, right?
Yeah.
Just make the break of the API fair. What's the word?
At least well
Explicit.
visible.
Yeah. Good, better words.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds good then. Who wants to set up do we want to set up the Jira ticket? Somebody want to do that or to sort of drive that work forward?
I remember to set up a Jira ticket.
Well, I was just wondering whether you ought to be the one doing it because your plate overflowing. But I mean, you're welcome to. I just want to make sure.
Make the change? No, I can make a Jira ticket.
That's fine.
All right,
Check
sounds
it, remind you to remember.
All right.
Do we have version 2.0 created in Jira? Maybe we should start throwing things in there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a bad idea. It doesn't mean it has to happen anytime soon. It just means it has to. It's things that are API changes get thrown in 2.0. And once we decide to move to 2.0, we can pull out the tickets and fix them.
Okay.
Is there another topic here?
No, that's it.
Oh, really?
I think that's it. Hey, we end with an hour today. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Go. I was going to suggest adding the open core repo to the set of Karaf repos in ONOS.
Didn't we already do it?
I don't know if we already did it, but I guess we should maybe talk about it here, just in case.
Yes, I
people
thought.
continue to
Okay,
hear
yes.
about
So you're talking about the one in the Karaf configuration. Yeah, I thought we did it.
that. Okay.
Or no, you know what? I thought we talked about it, and then yes,
So I just wanted to put it out here.
So when you do that, what difference does it make? I still can't do app activate.
No.
Call it, right?
You have to still install the app, or at least the repo's there.
the repo is there.
Yeah. So if people who want to use the OLT, AAA, whatever multicast apps, they just have to install them.
Yeah.
Right. And they start to know the exact name and whatever, all that stuff. But at least they don't have to feed ONOS
the UR, the artifacts, right?
The artifacts,
the jars, right?
jars, or
They
they
can just give it the XML that says what jars to load. Is that the difference? Or?
It's a good question. Sometimes I'm not quite sure what the word is.
Because
Also,
right now I do the OER and I push it down, so it works, right?
Yes, yes. So OER was designed to be completely self-enclosed, and so it should operate on apps that don't have artifacts published on Maven Central or anywhere. I thought that this was for some acceleration, basically. But
the idea is that we're pulling from remote.
If you add the remote, if I add the repository
To where?
to Graph.
To Graph. But the thing is, we don't pull apps from the Graph features. Like, we don't start up apps by asking for a feature to be started. We start up an app by providing a tarball, basically.
But there is an option to provide a URL, right?
yeah, you can provide URL.
Yeah. So the issue with adding
random URL.
we don't start up with the exception of the core features like ONOS API, the core stuff, ONOS whatever security. We don't start up any applications via their features directly.
No.
We let the application subsystem start the features after extracting the app XML
Making sure that it's
and the jars
And so
and the features XML.
So
adding the feature, adding your repo to the Carafe features isn't like a path that we want people to actually activate things with.
So what is the? Let me ask it differently, right? Let me ask the question differently. Forget core.
Mhm.
Someone has apps,
Mhm.
ONOS apps that they've published to some repo, to Maven Central, right? What is the cleanest way for them to load those apps and run them in ONOS? Right? Because right now, I mean, the way we're doing it is we fetch some URL that is an OAR.
Yeah. So you could provide the fully qualified URL. If you want, we can do Maven URL rewriting, where you convert Maven to HTML based on a repo base. But we don't have this notion of an apps repo.
Well, but the thing is, app is basically a jar.
Yeah.
That we could load. You can actually install an app from command line by giving a URL. You can. That's the only way from CLI actually to install an app. You have to give it the URL to pull from. And they'll actually download the URL from the stream. It's the same thing as uploading it.
If I already have, I mean, what I guess what I'm looking for is like the application subsystem is great, but there seems to be like a little fluff, like that little sugar missing.
Well, so it's optimized for the use case where you build an app and push it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so if you don't want to do the build the app part, if you just want to fetch from a repo, what we're missing is sort of the apt-get.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
So maybe what you'd get is instead of bundling all of our apps with the ONOS distro, you get maybe some core apps, and then we have like a bigger repository of ONOS apps, right, which is like your core repo.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could say, add repo cord or something, and if you add the cord repo, then at least you can see the apps or something, but they're like not downloaded or not installed, and then you'd say like app download or app fetch or app install.
So we
off a common name rather than off of a fully qualified URL.
So that means that now we need it has to be two keys, right? It has to be the repo it's coming from and the app name, because app names could be.
Well, yeah, sure, but it's the same way you resolve that with multiple repos and.
So we do have the underlying mechanism. In a sense, you can say app install URL.
Yep. Okay. So basically, what Ali's asking for is the sugar, which is
sugar on top of it. So you need a name to.
This notion of having a repo, which is a map of name to URL.
Exactly. Yes.
And so basically, what you have to do is if you can say add cord repo, for example, you have to walk that repo to build that mapping essentially.
Well, this is the fluff you're talking
Yeah,
about, right?
It is in a way, right? Because
You either ask for like an XML file or a JSON file which describes the repo,
Isn't that what?
or you walk the repo.
Yeah, but
I
isn't
mean,
that what Sid was supposed to be working on? Kind of like a little.
His was more of like like an app store.
I see.
He focused more on the web side
I see on the
of what it
front,
would look like,
on the back.
but not necessarily on the ONOS integration.
So I think at least, I mean, we installed from URLs the feature that we had with Core, right?
That seems like a good starter. So
But
the
the
starter app
output
task we
to
could
the
call
XML.
for community. Right?
It points to the OER, I believe.
Oh yeah.
I believe it's the OER, which causes it to download, causes almost to download the OER and install it and activate it.
What was this bit where we were pushing AppXML to?
That was
Yeah,
before.
that's-
that was
But
before.
that's
that was
that's still supported.
Yeah.
You can push an app XML and it'll basically that describes a feature. That feature has to be you have to have a URL. A feature has to be URL Maven addressable,
So
and that'll
that's
pull stuff.
if you're just going to provide an app XML without features thing, then the app XML needs to either describe the features repo or that features repo needs to be present in the graph features.
And that's what I thought he was asking about.
Maybe the question really is like how do we want this to work? Right? Like forget all the stuff we have now. Like we have a network operating system. We want to load applications on it, right? Do we want applications to be pushed upon it, or do we want applications to be pulled into it?
Well, so there's going to be certain deployment cases where people don't want their ONOS thing connected to the internet,
Well, so
right? And if you don't want to connect to the internet, you're probably going to be downloading application OARs, and you're going to be pushing them to your controller the same way you install ONOS.
So in Core we have exactly that use case, right? In Core we have exactly that use case where the ONOS instances are not connected to the internet. Well, they are, but they're not. And what we do is we deploy a Maven repo inside of the Core pod.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And then we just go
So
to
you have an app repo inside your pod.
yes. And then what we do is we tell ONOS go fetch this OAR from that repo, right? And it does that.
Sure.
But my point is that works kind of fine, but it's kind of clunky for the general use case. And I think the more we separate out applications out of ONOS, the more this applications are. We should think about how applications should be distributed. Maybe tell people you can make an app repository for applications. They just have to have like a JSON describing some mapping. Well, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Basic app store, right?
Yeah, we may even be able to leverage the metadata files in Maven.
Yeah.
If we use the Maven sort of central hierarchy, that's a fairly well described one.
Yeah, I think it's
well
perfectly
bound.
flexible OBR.
I
Basically.
mean, as long as we don't have to rewrite. Like the idea is to do this writing as little new stuff as possible.
Yeah. So the thing is, you can use the Maven Central as a basically repository, and then all we need is a place to host the metadata about the name binding and basically kind of a catalog and provide another.
You may even be able to shove that into fields, and Maven Central is going to automatically build metadata files that you can look at. So if you said like I want to use a classifier OAR or something.
No, absolutely. That's what I was thinking. But somewhere you still need a catalog to be able to browse an index.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can enumerate the directory.
No, but we need to know what are the ONOS apps that exist in the world that we can pull down.
I mean, so this is the thing, right? Like maybe if we can recycle, say things like, find a way to like an app that can do apt-get update and like new packages that have been added, right? So to some extent, we should be able to do that. We have a predefined list of repositories that we know about, right? You can add your own.
Yeah,
Same thing, same method,
including the Maven Central, right?
Yeah, of course, it's the same. It just happens to always be shipped, right? And then we have a whole bunch of other repositories where you can pull from. Right? And there's
Even if your app's not in the code base, they're still visible to people, right? Like they can still on ONOS, they can browse the list of apps and see, oh, there's a AAA app that's over here and this other app that I could use.
Yep. I mean, it's basically just extending the model that currently is already being used for the notion where you have repositories, and the repositories can host features, they can host jar files, or they can now host OR files. It's just that if you need to have a way of identifying a catalog.
Discovery and installation for people that don't want to build themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, just have a. And I think the catalog in here, I guess, is.
So something that becomes important here is two things. One, describing the API compatibility of
Yes.
applications
Yes.
Yes,
to
well,
ONOS, and the
Yes.
other is having some notion of app versioning
Yes.
and dependencies on app versions.
Yeah, so we already have a ticket, I think, for the app version, introducing app version. That's, I think, something we ought to tackle sooner than later. As far as the dependencies or the compatibility, we should probably ought to discuss that, figure out how we want that to work.
I mean, I don't know how we can, what kind of tools we can leverage for this, but it'd be nice if we could. I'm worried that like we should go out and write like a package dependency mechanism and a package. It's a lot of work, right?
Well, yeah, like there's many to choose from, right?
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether there are things we can recycle for this. Right? There are repositories like there's a thing called Athlete that might have Java extensions that allows us to introspect by through Java, and then so that it just happens to store, essentially anything you want, but app packages usually, but that packages, but maybe I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a way where we can recycle as much of pre-existing work, because if a package mechanism already has a dependency, a way of describing dependencies, we don't have to invent that.
Yeah. So you're suggesting redoing the one. So currently we have app within ONOS. There is a notion of app dependencies. An app can require others. But currently that doesn't support versioning dimension. So the idea was to add basically version to the coordinate namespace or to the dependency. So are you suggesting we don't do that and do it outside somewhere else, or I was thinking that.
Yes, I would suggest that the dependencies are described. The dependencies of an application are described within the application. Right? The application
Currently they are. Yes, that's where they are. And we it's just lacking the version coordinate.
Yeah. But I mean like an apps package, right? Like a that package, you say what your dependencies are and the version number and stuff like that. But there are tools that already exist for these things that already already resolve these things for you. Rather than trying to reinvent the package dependency system ourselves, we rely on something that already exists. Like Athlete, like I don't know what. I'm just saying. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm just saying because.
Currently we do that on behalf of internally to make sure that we sequence the features behind in the proper order, because otherwise we basically build a tree.
I don't know. I mean, I guess all that stems from how do we manage apps going forward? And maybe it's a larger.
So there's internal and there's external. I guess internal in order to be able to ignite them correctly. I think that we have to continue to do. But if it's for externally, just in terms of
but they should
repository and stuff like
to
that.
some extent, internal and external.
It should be the same.
It should be exactly the same. Like, it should be exactly the
This
same. It
is
just so
where
happens.
the OAI come from.
Yeah, it just so happens that when you install ONOS, like vanilla ONOS, you get a set of apps that are already there, right? But their description and the way they're ignited and the way they're handled shouldn't be any different than any other application.
Yeah, but I mean the reason now. So there's a couple of reasons we're doing it internally. Basically, we have a homegrown mechanism is because we need to take into consideration distributed aspects. Maybe make sure that there's sequencing, make sure that the stuff is everywhere first before we unite.
That's fine.
Unite things.
That's fine. But that's
I guess I'm not at all opposed to using third party or existing solutions. Not at all. I guess I'm just trying to failing to see how in a context of internal app management in terms of the application proper ignition order, how
using a third-party system to replace what we do today is gonna
Not
help us.
not replacing. I'm suggesting that we reuse some existing system that describes the dependency, how we handle the dependency.
Oh, the description of the dependencies.
So that it's easier for everybody to. The reason why I'm saying this is because in the future, you could imagine that any apt repo, for example, or any deb repo could be a repository for ONOS. And if we're already reusing the same dependency mechanism, this dependency description, and we just slot our apps into apps, into Launchpad, into whatever. Right? That's the idea. That's the idea, right? Now, maybe that could be completely off. I don't know, but that's the long-term vision where you can, because if we home grow our repository mechanisms and dependency mechanism, then it's only us, and we're asking people to set up their own repositories for us, which might be fun. If it's easy to do and it's not really a big deal. But yeah, okay.
All right. So your sort of the original triggering question. We probably should we add a repo to the features?
Sure.
That's really not necessary anymore.
Yeah. This is going to make a difference. But I think maybe besides this conversation, we need to think about how we want to handle apps going forward, given that people write only apps and not check out the entire ONOS code, build their apps, and build it together. So we need to figure out a way that is clean. Because when I did it for core, I was a little surprised. Like I was like, oh, this is more complicated than I thought.
Yeah, like for example, providing ready-to-go POM file for some of that.
Yeah, for example,
to bring in all of the
the POMs are breaking me
and then it will So we're definitely making steps towards it, but we have long to go.
Yeah. So.
All right.
That's all I'm saying.
More food for thought and
time for food.
Alrighty, I think that's it then. We'll see you guys next week. Actually, we probably should figure out who's gonna host next week because I won't be here. I won't be here for next couple of weeks. I'm taking vacation, so we can talk about that. I don't want to have a 3-week break between TST meetings, so maybe somebody can help me.
I'll be here.
All right. So with that, we're gonna wrap up and see you next week, everybody. Bye.